A beautiful afternoon. Thanks for joining us again on the program Flipside. Today is the 14th day of October, but yesterday, the 13th of October, was the United Nations International Day on Disaster Risk Reduction. Now, we have a lot of problems in our society, a lot of natural hazards that, if not controlled, becomes disasters. But if we have the proper management of it all, we will not have to be talking about disasters. And this year, the UN decided to focus on governance. Yes, how much of effort is the government's putting in disaster control? Well, we know that the focus is on governance, but I would personally focus much more on individuals on Flipside. I don't know why I always do that before we even face government properly, because the governance is all about us. It's not just the people at the top, it's also about we that are being governed. When we talk about natural disasters, a lot of things, or natural hazards, a lot of things come to mind: building collapse, fire outbreaks. A lot of deaths result from all of these disasters, a lot of loss of lives, loss of properties, loss of maybe bodily parts. You just, a lot of things happen. If you watch the news on yesterday in the morning, you would see that we had cases on reports on accidents that happened around hour in just after Oluku. People died in that accident. It could have been prevented if the driver wasn't moving at top speed, according to eyewitness reports. We also had news of a 15-year-old boy, teenager, who was swept by flood. It took about 3 hours to get him out of the flood, but by the time he was found, he was already dead. And that's not the first story. We've had stories of children who were drowned and a lot of other things. Then also on that same news, in the morning, we still had a story of a building collapse at Obanlede in Lagos, and it just goes on and on. Maybe next week it will be a story on fire outbreak on one market in Benin City, or maybe it's this time to move beyond markets to a mosque or a church. Well, my name is Daisy Leo Asikidi, and today we'll be talking about disaster reduction, disaster risk reduction. That's our topic, disaster risk reduction. I have a safety expert in the house that will be talking about this with me. But before you meet my guest and we'll get all into this discussion, we'll go on a break. We'll get the UN message on this day before we get talking. Just stay. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. The program is Flipside, the other side of the news, and today we'll be talking about disaster risk reduction. I'm Daisy Leo Asikidi, and my guest today is the branch secretary of the Nigerian Red Cross, Mr. Wilson Ihoemwe Gazin. I
Good
like that your name.
Good
afternoon.
Viewers at home.
Okay. All right. So today we're talking about disaster risk reduction. And the first question I'm going to ask, I know many people are waiting to hear about SARS, NSARS. That's a trend now. We'll talk about that. Hold on just a little bit. But let's talk about the disaster risk education in Edo State. I know the Red Cross does a lot of sensitization, lecturing, trainings, and publicity on safety, and when issues also happen, how you can help yourself. So during your field walks, your assessment, how educated would you say an average adult in Edo State is when it comes to disaster risk reduction?
Okay, disaster risk reduction is activities put in place to mitigate disasters. Now, it involves preparedness, it involves response, it involves rehabilitation, and it involves, if you like, call it construction. Now, in those states, as a humanitarian organization, of course, one of the core mandates of the Red Cross is that the Red Cross it's out to alleviate the suffering of the most vulnerable people, and these most vulnerable people can be found either in the urban or even the rural centers, and they include the aged, the physically challenged, the pregnant women, and children. Now, for Edo State, what have we put in place to educate, our members on the disaster risk reduction? Now, the Red Cross is a community-based organization. It's a community-based organization in the sense that membership is spread across. That's why we have the one you say it's an international organization. Beyond being an international organization, we have the National Society, which is the Nigerian Red Cross. From the national headquarters, we have it at the branches. From branches, we have it at the divisional level, which is local government. From the local government, we have it at the community levels. Now, in all of our meetings, two things is key. And these two things are first aid and disaster risk reduction activities. Then, apart from the community-based activities we carry out, we also have the school unit drive. We have Red Cross in primary school, we have in secondary school, and we also have in tertiary school. So, looking at it, the Red Cross is well positioned to respond to emergency, and our members are well informed when it comes to disaster risk reduction activities.
Okay. What ways do you think is most suitable or most effective in educating an adult on disaster risk reduction?
Okay. I'll speak on. There are different. We can reach them through different ways. The jingles are good, because I also understand that even those in the very rural areas, they can still access. They can still access their radios, so they can get information through radios. Jingles are good. Then for community-based organizations like the Red Cross, so what we do is, we meet them one-on-one. It's an informal setting, but you have the opportunity to discuss with them heart to heart, and they can also share, some of their challenges with you. For instance, in the Edo, where we are currently experiencing flooding in Edo State, and that's when we say flooding, there are flooding obviously most of the LGA in the state, but the most prominent one, which is now an annual occurrence, is that of the the flooding at Ilushi area in Esan Southeast, the Udaba, Negbete, Ogomere, and Udochi in Etsako Central, and Yabata, Egori, Aganebode in Etsako East. Now, the best way to reach them, obviously, at times we make announcement on radio, make announcement on the television that, when it's about flooding, that they should move to the upland. They may not understand that completely. So you need to meet them one-on-one on why they should move to upland as we speak now, most people are displaced in both Edo North and even in Edo Central. They are displaced as a result of flood. And by, I'm made to understand that, camp will be opening today. Should the camp open, we will now have, internally displaced persons in their country. And, okay, we can see the picture, and this is Edo State. So the best way to address this is that you meet with them one-on-one, because yes, they listen to radio. They may not know the consequence of this flooding, even though it's an annual thing now. But until you meet with them one-on-one and you're able to, share with them some of the consequence, they may not move.
Okay. And now we're just sticking on flooding. Let me just stick to it. What exactly would you say is the most issue we should concentrate on as regards flood management? We had it on the news of a boy who drowned this week, and that's not the first time. We've had a series of news like that where people fall into a moving water, and to find them is, some of them we would never find. If it's outside of Nigeria, you'll still be able to get information about the corpse, something. No traces. So what would you say is the biggest problem we should concentrate on in flood management to avoid all of these disasters that emerge from flooding?
For me, I think the strategy for disaster risk reduction activity in the country should be laced with government policy. The strategy for addressing disaster risk reduction should be laced with government policy, very strong government policies. Now, and it also involves construction, construction, education, and all of it. In Edo State, when it started raining, we issue an alert. From the Red Cross office in Edo, that as it is raining, children should not be allowed to go out even when you notice it's about to rain, because you understand your environment better than I do. And because you understand your environment better than I do, one will expect that those who live around, I watched the news yesterday now, and I saw the gully. I saw something like a canal that is leading to the retention point. So persons, those that live around those areas, whenever it rains, they are all living at risk, because there's already hazard there. And that hazard poses serious, it's already an hazard, and so it's poses to a lot of danger to the inhabitants in that area, particularly the children. And what is government supposed to do? It's construction. One would expect, but as a humanitarian organization, what we do is just to advise government on what to do. And I also heard from the government angle that the contractor will be moving in, while speaking on the subject matter now. The contractor will be moving in, and in no distance time, the place will be barricaded so that that ugly incident will not repeat itself. But going forward, like I said, construction, education, there is need for education, because even where you have that, so many persons still don't know. I just heard it on news. I may drive there tomorrow without knowing, and will run into danger. So there is need for public awareness. And I also understand that that's not the only retention point we have in the state. Therefore, there is need for public to know such place. There is also need for, you put a signpost, so that the people, so that people can know, you don't just fall into such hazard when it's marked. The moment it's marked, it gives you a sign that this place it's a danger spot.
Okay. Apart from flooding, another disaster that seems to hit the air is fire. California now, they are dealing with a lot of fire incidents, and they do know how to control the bushfire. The battle seems like they are losing, but I can imagine if that was happening in Nigeria, what we would have done. Do we even have enough to react? But let's leave reaction and talk about proactiveness. Now, fire management, we have a lot of markets that had fire incidents last year, even into this year. Government promised to help rebuild, reactive. But what are the what procedures would you say should be put in place for prevention so that these disasters would not happen for fire?
Okay, with this, I will just stick to Red Cross as a humanitarian organization.
Fine.
Now, for the Red Cross as a humanitarian organization, it's donor dependent. So all our activities are based on the type of support we receive from donors. For fire disaster, obviously, is capital intensive, and in Nigeria, it's not something the Red Cross it's venturing into right now. But that's not to say that we do not respond. We respond to emergencies, to fire disaster where lives are involved, because we are not involved in the properties. We are not so involved in how to bring down the fire. But the moment life is involved, and those who are saddled with the responsibility of, bringing the fire to a halt, the moment they are able to do that, and the lives that are involved are brought out, of course, the Red Cross will take over from there. So for fire disaster, like you said, in Nigeria here, we are more reactive than being proactive. But if you ask me, all stakeholders, like I said for disaster risk reduction activities, there must be the strategy for disaster risk reduction must be laced with strong government policy, and it must be adequately funded. Without funding, obviously, there's really nothing we can do. And for the fire disaster, government it's the key agency, either the government by way of SEMA, government by way of NEMA, or government even by way of the what do you call them? The
fire service. The
fire service. So they are the lead agency. So once they are funded, obviously, they are funding and training. Apart from just funding, training, and public enlightenment. Once these three combine together, I think we'll have a headway.
Building collapse is another disaster in Nigeria that's quite common. Apart from the recent one at Obalende in Lagos, we've had several cases. Well, Lagos seems to be the one trending this year in terms of building collapse, but Edo State has also had their fair share of building collapse, especially buildings are not even fully constructed. While they're still under construction, the building just gives way, and that's how it just ends. So would you advise for building collapse disaster prevention?
Yeah, the ball still fall on the court of, it's government, that's government, and government have the regulatory body in charge of, monitoring, what do you call it?
Standard.
Standard. Then there is an integrity test. When construction is also going, there's this thing they call integrity test to check if it meets, they all fall under standard. Now, as humanitarian organizations like us, what we do is that when the disaster and it involves human life, of course, we will respond. But for the building collapse, I was driving through Sapele Road yesterday, around where they call ROCC. The road was terribly bad, and you can see at the other side, you see the flood. The flood was moving there, and it's like that partner. It's like basin. So I was just imagining between now and 10 years, those people, they may start experiencing building collapse. Then we also have so many buildings around Uselu, particularly Tom Line area. Some of them have moved out of the house. Some buildings are even collapsed. If you go to Agboro, the same thing. So it's government policy to be laced with the strategy for addressing building collapse. Then the building code, those that are saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that what do you call them? Those under the Ministry of Housing, so they know how government layouts are, how they do the whole how the state is being plan. So people must also adhere to that building plan and how the state is being planned. Once we do that, I do not think the issue of building collapse will be rampant as it is.
Okay. Now, there's a trending story, NSAS, hashtag NSAS. It's on Twitter, it's on Instagram, it's everywhere you turn. All the celebrities are in the streets protesting. We have even comedies coming out from the collapse, proposals coming. Everybody's just doing their own thing with the NSAS protest. And the government has agreed to stop SARS for now, and they are forming a new term, SWAT. But the protest doesn't seem to stop. The protest started with we want SARS to end. Now SARS has been said to stay and stop functioning, but the youths are refusing to let go. Now, during the course of the protest, there were lots of, there were incidences of gunshots, the police shot at people, people got injured, some people even died, and it was a very smooth protest at the beginning, but now we're gradually recording disasters in terms of lives and property. And if we're not careful, if they keep protesting, maybe more would happen. But what would you advise the youths who are protesting right now, and even every other person who's planning to go join, to do to avoid all of these disasters of injuries and death?
All right. For those that are protesting, they are our brothers and sisters. And of course, the officials who are in the SARS, they are also, some of them they are our parents, some of them they are our, loved ones. Now, as it is enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution, freedom of association, freedom of expression. Therefore, I think the youths, they have the right to protest. But however, it will be, as it is now, it's becoming worrisome, the dimension of the experience. And the government and the protesters need to sit together across different states at the level of different. That is the only thing that has mentioned. It was reported towards last weekend about the meeting that was called between some of the protesters and the deputy governor. And I want to expect that, that would douse the tension. Should there be violence, I can be rest assured that the Red Cross, we are monitoring that of Edo, every part. It's not a coordinated protest. It's not coordinated. You hear that there's protest going on in Opaso Bomba. The next thing you hear that Ring Road is blocked. So it's not coordinated. And because it's not coordinated, it's difficult. But as a community-based organization, our men are on standby, and whenever it turns violence and there are casualties to be responded to, of course, the Red Cross, we are there to respond to those casualties, because in any case, our interest is to ensure that we don't just lose life unnecessarily. For those that, for any of the protesters that will sustain injury, the Red Cross will be there to also assist them by way of giving first aid. Okay.
All right, well, we're still on Flipside, but we'll go on another break and take a message from the UN on the International Day on Disaster Risk Reduction. We'll be back. About governance on disaster risk control 2020, not necessarily the people. So I understand where Mr. Wilson Ikoemagazin is coming from. Well, your last words on the show, we're done.
Okay. To be safe, and as far as what we are discussing now is all about safety. For us to be safe, one is that if you must drive, have first aid kits in your vehicle, even at home, have first aid kit. Then you also made mention of fire prevention. It's not too expensive to have a fire extinguisher at home. It's also not too expensive to also have fire extinguisher in our various vehicles. When we do all of this, I think which will also be contributing our quotas towards reducing the incidence of disasters in our community.
Okay, I want to say thank you to the Red Cross for availing themselves to be our guests today. The other organizations did not show up. Well, it's been good. It's been a fun 30 minutes. You can get this video on YouTube and catch up. Well, everyone should try to prevent disasters from happening. Now, the government puts a policy in place, gets good architectures to build your homes, and then you just go to the roadside and get any legbuke, and you're building and you expect your building to stand. It might stand, it might not. But let's do the right things as well, and we'll all be safe. We do not want lives and property to be lost just like that. We want to live to our ripe, strong old age. I'm Daisy Lira Sekedi. Thanks for watching. I'll be back next week.